Kia ora, good evening. Police are investigating the deaths of hundreds of sheep that were thought to be smothered on a Southland farm at the start of the month. Police believe around 500 sheep were startled by poachers on a Mount Wendon property near Riversdale. The sheep were discovered dead in a narrow gully. The stock loss is estimated to be tens of thousands of dollars worth and is thought to have happened overnight on the 2nd of February. Detective Sergeant Greg Baird says these incidents can put the lives of others at risk, particularly if firearms are involved. Farmers or others who see suspicious activity, including vehicles or people not normally seen in the neighbourhood, are being asked to contact Gaul Police on 03 203 9300 or call Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111. Revenue Minister Todd McClay has issued a warning to New Zealanders to be wary of email scams promising tax refunds. Mr McClay says that over the last few days he has been made aware of a number of people who have received emails advising that they are eligible for a tax refund. The email suggests that they've been contacted by Inland Revenue. Mr McClay says Inland Revenue will never send taxpayers an email that asks people to provide personal information or that contains a direct link to a page to submit such information. He advises anyone who receives an email asking for details to simply delete it. Chair of the City Council Infrastructure Services Committee, Lindsay Thomas, wants to see deals such as the one negotiated over the electricity put to the council before a release is made to the media. Councillor Thomas is in favour of the deal with the council's electricity supplier that will see a saving of $500,000 in the budget, but he believes the contract should have been set in stone prior to being announced. Hunter Andrews spoke to him about the proposed rate increase of 0.43%.
To get it down to 0.43 so far is a pretty good effort, but I believe a rate increase should sit around 1.3, 1.5.
Do you think that at the end of the day, after this 0.343 figure is discussed, that's what we'll end up with, about 1.5?
I'm not too sure. We don't know what's going to come out of the submissions. I mean, people will look at the draft budgets and then they'll come along and submit on that. There might be things in there that they don't want to change. There might be things that they do want to change, or we may have organisations come that need extra money to actually that will impact on the rates.
Now, you, at your committee yesterday, you suggested you had a few concerns with the way that the information of the cut was released to the media, maybe prematurely.
Yeah, a wee bit prematurely, especially for the members of the committee. I mean, as a chairman of the committee, I was aware of that because we had a meeting 3 days earlier, and we were aware of the $500,000 per annum saving, but some of the committee members weren't. And I'd rather it be ratified by council first so that we accept the contract. It's all locked in stone then, and then perhaps it could be announced.
You have no problems with that saving though, that's very well done, isn't it?
Oh, exactly. I mean, it's
well negotiated.
Yeah, well negotiated by Cameron McIntosh, Director of Infrastructure and Services, and I think you couldn't get a better saving. I mean, that just shows us how proactive our directors have been in trying to look for savings and efficiencies, and the electricity ones, I mean, to save $1.5 million in 3 years is fantastic.
Will you be making some sort of recommendation that these public announcements are at least held off for a while until you think due process is done?
I'd rather see the process of the press releases going, that we get them first, even though they do get emailed to us, but we get them first and actually basically reply to them and say, yes, we've received that, thank you very much type stuff, instead of this is a press release that's going in the paper tomorrow, because we have no time to actually think about them.
Or on TV tomorrow.
Yes, or on the TV. I'm sure they notify you first.
Is that the due process though? Is that usually what happens?
It seems to be the process, but as Councillor Arnold pointed out, she's a bit uncertain about the fact that she got a press release saying this is what's happening, instead of saying this is what we plan to do.
What do you think? So a good figure would be about 1.5 at the end of the day. Do you think that's realistic?
1.5 and under. I think it's realistic. We just don't want to have a lower rate increase and then have a spike. I mean, people of Southland and Invercargill, we just want continuity. So let's just make it boom, boom. And there's no way in the world that we can have a zero rate increase, and there are councils around this country who have lived on borrowings and it's come back to bite them, and they're going to have huge rate increases. So we're pretty lucky down here, and as I say, we've got efficiencies.
Why can't we have a 0.43% rate increase? Isn't that the goal, to keep them as low as possible?
And
in fact, no or money back would be great.
Oh, I don't think there's any way of money back, especially when we're heading into the earthquake recovery. These EQC things. It's just horrendous. We've started with the Bluff Service Centre. Now we've got Anderson's Park. The water tower. So we've got all these buildings that council own that the public use.
And the museum as well.
Yeah, and the museum, and we've got a duty of care. But until councils look at the government and say, where do we stop? We're in trouble.
Students at James Hargest College Senior Campus are back cooking on site more than a year after a suite of classrooms was gutted by fire in an arson attack in January last year. Since then, senior students have been bused to the junior campus for practical food classes, a move that was costing thousands of dollars a week in operating buses and paying extra teaching staff, as well as lost learning time for students. The ICT classrooms, the second stage of the reconstruction, are expected to be completed in around 3 months, returning the college to its full complement of classrooms. The rebuild used the existing footprint of at an estimated cost of $2.1 million. The financial effects will continue for several years for the school. Stay with us after the break. The Health Minister says no to a sugar tax and being prepared for an emergency down on the farm. Welcome back. New Zealand Post has today denied it's holding back Standard Post to encourage people to use its fast post service. The Postal Workers Union says there's a deliberate policy to hold back mail that's been processed and is ready for delivery. New Zealand Post says it has no such policy, saying priority is given to fast post items as deliveries expected the next day, while other items posted at the standard rate should be expected to reach recipients within 3 days. John Maynard of the Postal Workers Union says New Zealand Post appears to have given an internal instruction that complaints about fast post being delayed are not to be recorded as complaints. New Zealand Post Chief Executive Brian Roach says different modes of mail delivery would be trialled over the next 6 months in preparation for the start of mail to urban addresses being delivered on alternate days next year. Over 90 days are supporting the 7th Relay for Life Southland, with thousands expected to take to the track over the 22-hour event at Invercargill's Rugby Park this weekend. It's been in the planning for 6 months and organisers are hoping to raise around $200,000. Local acts will be on stage for 12 hours from lunchtime Saturday till midnight, and there's plenty of entertainment for the little people too.
We've got children's activities in the centre, we've got a marching display, there's going to be a family fair factor, bra pong, you name it, lots of things to get people active and keep them awake during the small hours. Glow in the dark relay races in the middle of the night. Plus we've got the candlelight ceremony at dusk, the opening lap, which is for survivors and carers, and then the closing ceremony at 10 on Sunday. Draw card for children on Sunday morning. We've managed to get Adam from What Now to come and see us, and they're bringing the whole outside broadcast crew. So we're going to have six to 8 live crosses from Relay on Sunday morning. So we're hoping that lots of little children will get out of bed and get their mums and dads with some change in their pockets to come down and join us at Relay for some of the fun that we're sorting out for What Now. But also during the day, the bands and things, it's free entertainment. You know, anybody can come and do a lap and enjoy what we're doing.
As far as individuals go making an effort to raise funds, you've got some special events on the day?
We have indeed. We've got one lady, Melanie, who just took it upon herself to have her head shaved. So she's been growing her hair since April last year when her mother died. And she's having her head shaved at Relay at about 2:45 on Saturday. And she went through the fundraise online avenue, and so she's had money come in from the Bahamas in support of her cause, and she's raised over $2,500 just on her own. So, you know, having people there to support her head shaving will be fantastic.
Can you give us some examples about what teams are doing to raise funds this year?
We've had Fonterra had a site barbecue for all their workers. People paid to belong to that, and then they sold the barbecues. They auctioned the actual barbecues at the end. There've been car trials and cheese boards and movie nights and lots of sausages. and beers and all sorts of things.
A majority of New Zealand adults have shown some level of support for controls on how much sugar is contained in soft drinks. The Horizon Research survey of 3,451 people revealed 46% believe there should definitely be limits on sugar in drinks, and a further 32% said there should possibly be limits to sugar content. Far fewer people supported a tax on the sugar content of drinks, with 18% saying definitely and 26% saying possibly. Horizon Principal Graham Coleman says the survey was the first scientific opinion poll of the public's views on policies to control sugar intake. The maximum margins of error in the survey were 1.7% up or down. Health Minister Tony Ryle says government has no plans to introduce a sugar tax or sugar restrictions. Emergency Management Southland staff were pushing the Be Prepared for an Emergency message at the recent Waimumu Field Days. Emergency Management Advisor Sandra Miller says there are different items required to handle an emergency when you live on a farm many kilometres away from the nearest help. Hunter Andrews asked her about the differing emergency requirements for the rural sector.
I guess it's the length of time that they're likely to be without power or maybe their water supply. Like, because they haven't got the population base, they're more inclined to be the last on the list to get it restored in their area. So they have to be conscious of where we say to be ready for 3 days, they probably need to be looking at more at 5 to 10.
How prepared have you found farmers to be?
Fairly much so, actually. It was surprising. We were over at the field days in February, and a lot of farmers we had a chat to came back to us to say that they had things organised in case they had mishaps on the farm or without power or water. So a lot of contingency out there. So it's quite good, really.
We're not only talking about the threats to human life, are we, but also there is an economic impact if a farmer loses power for several days.
There sure is. Like, for example, if they miss a few milkings with their cows, that puts an impact on the cattle, and their milking is not up to scratch and it doesn't come back, or doesn't appear to come back to what they were previously. So they can lose a lot of money in their season just because of missing a few milkings.
We're also talking quite a bit of power required to milk cows, aren't we? So these are not cheap or small generators.
No, they're not. You can have smaller ones that just run your house and things like that, that keep the deep freeze running and give you a wee bit of light or whatever. But to have the energy to run the cow shed, or actually to start it, the milking machines going, etc., takes a fair bit. So a lot of the farmers we spoke to actually have joined together with other farmers, neighbouring ones, etc., and they share those big expensive generators, which is a fantastic idea.
Do you think that farmers are more on board with this than perhaps their city counterparts? Are we about equal? Are we about equally prepared, or are farmers sensing that vulnerability more?
I think the farmers are ahead of the urban folk, I really do. And it's because they're used to having power outages and things and being a little bit more isolated than what the urban counterparts are. So yes, I think the rural guys are ahead there.
But if people are sitting at home watching this and they're going, well, I don't have 3 days or more, it's time for them to move, isn't it, and get those kits together?
Yeah, it would be good. I mean, we all need them at a minimum 3 days of stuff to be prepared and get going, yes.
And that's all from the news team. Next on Sport, more post-match reaction following the Highlanders' first round Super 15 win against the Blues. From us, good evening.